During the past 6 months, I religiously had a language exchange session every week. During this time, apart from improving my Italian, I've also learned a great deal about how to do a conversation exchange properly. So on this video, I'm gonna tell you how I went about it, what I've learned from it, and what I would avoid doing on my next language exchange. So in April last year, I saw that Gloria had uploaded a story saying that she was gonna move to Spain. She had been my Italian teacher for a few months, and at that time, I wanted to brush up my Italian a little bit, so I just DM'd her and suggested we do a language exchange. That's how I started having conversations in Italian once a week. We would schedule a video call where I would speak in her mother tongue for 30 minutes and where she would speak in Spanish for the same amount of time. So this way, by just devoting 1 hour per week and at cost zero, we were gonna be able to improve our speaking abilities in our target languages. In our first sessions, we were not very structured though. We would just show up without preparing anything in advance and just explain something relevant that we had done during the week. This could go from simple anecdotes such as me telling her about my recent trip to Sicily to her telling me about how often she spoke Spanish in Spain. Nel centro dell'isola c'erano molte autostrade con cantieri, tipo la cosa sorprendente è che non abbiamo visto nessuna persona che lavorasse nei cantieri.
Porque tengo una compañera de pisos italiana y hablamos mucho italiano.
So while one of us was explaining these stories, the other person would just follow up with questions. That is, we were having a normal conversation between colleagues and we were letting the conversation flow. Whenever either of us made a mistake in the target language, we would interrupt each other, correct it, and write the correct word on the chat.
Magari ti aiuta a essere più flessibile con questo metodo.
Una cosa piccolissima ti aiuta ad essere.
If we didn't understand why that correction had been made, then we would just ask for clarification.
Andrò dal medico. E dal medico.
E perché dal medico?
È come quando dico I'll go to the doctors, vado dal dottore. Puoi dirlo con alcune professioni e tutti i nomi propri, per esempio.
And that's basically how we went about it at the beginning. After a while though, we started organizing the sessions a little bit. For instance, she would ask me about a specific topic in Spanish, such as when to use the accentuation marks or how to use the subjunctive mood properly. And I would then prepare a session where I would explain that topic to her and give her some exercises to try on the spot. Or for instance, I would be the one trying to master the subjunctive mood in Italian, or the one who wanted to understand how personal pronouns work in this language, and she would be the one preparing a small session about it. Other times, she would ask me some doubts related to specific Spanish words that she had come across during the week while living in Spain.
Per esempio, una puntura di zanzara, ok? Quindi arriva una zanzara e ti punge, ok? Quindi una puntura. Se la zanzara ti punge, la puntura ti prude, ok? Itches. Pungere, prudere e grattare. Pungere, come si dice in spagnolo.
As time went by, we also started preparing lists of random questions that we would ask the counterpart. For example, what do you prefer, cats or dogs? Could you compare the healthcare system in Germany with the one you have in Spain? Or sometimes they would get a little bit more personal, such as tell me about your last romantic failure, what has been your biggest achievement, or what is your favorite cuisine and why? This way, the other person would have to answer impromptu and would be forced to use some words or expressions he or she didn't know beforehand.
Come ti sembra il sistema sanitario in Germania?
Finally, something else we did during this language exchange was to ask specific questions about the other person's field of expertise. So she's a medical student and I have a degree in economics, so at some point I would prepare some questions related to medicine I was interested in, and she would ask me about, say, investing.
Come hai deciso di fare il tuo portafoglio di investimenti? Cosa ritieni che sia sicuro? Cosa ritieni che non sia sicuro? Hai un'opinione a riguardo?
Sì, allora...
I'm not gonna let you listen to the answer I gave her, because that would be worth a few $1,000s. So jokes aside, note that by doing this, we are not only learning about something we're interested in, but we're also forcing the other person to use certain words and expressions related to a very specific domain. Okay, so that is in essence how the language exchange evolved. So after this experience, I sat down to reflect upon it, and I came up with 3 things I have learned from it and 3 things I could have done better. One of the things I've learned is that a language exchange will force you to better understand your own language. So what would happen every now and then is that Gloria would make a mistake in Spanish, I would correct her, but I would be unable to tell exactly why she was wrong. A clear example is when she asked me about the difference between por and para, which comes natural to native speakers, but which is not self-evident to foreigners. I believe that better understanding how my native language works is important because it will probably allow me to get a quicker grasp of concepts when I'm the one learning a foreign language. If you're able to understand the nuances of your own language really well and you can explain them to others, then you're gonna be able to better comprehend how other languages operate. If I understand how the subjunctive mood is created in Spanish instead of using it intuitively because it's my mother tongue, then I'll be able to better understand how the subjunctive mood is created in Italian, because I'll be able to see the parallelisms and the differences between the two way quicker. So I'm sure that brushing up my knowledge of Spanish grammar and explaining some concepts to Gloria will aid me when I'm learning other foreign tongues. Doing this language exchange has also made me more humble, and what I mean by this is that I have become more tolerant whenever a teacher didn't know an answer to one of the questions I asked her. Before this experience, I used to get mad at ITALKI teachers who didn't know the answer to one of the questions I had asked them. I would say to myself, you're a teacher and you're a native speaker of that language, so you should know every single nuance of that tongue. But as I just mentioned in my previous point, I've now realized that there are many things that I would be able to say correctly in Spanish without knowing exactly why they have to be said in that particular order or way. Now I am fully aware that as native speakers, we will in so many occasions say things as they sound more adequate to us, but without thinking about it, without knowing exactly what the rules, the grammar rules behind it are. Finally, the most important thing I've noticed, quite unexpectedly, was that you can actually learn a lot while teaching your native tongue. At the onset of the exchange, I thought that teaching Spanish would be rather boring for me and that it wasn't gonna bring me that much value. I thought I would just have to correct Gloria whenever she made a mistake and that was pretty much gonna be it. But I was wrong, because a language exchange allows you to know more about topics you are already interested in. This is what happened when we started asking each other questions about topics we were genuinely interested in and where the other person was more knowledgeable about. For example, I asked her about nutrition and about her life as a medical student, and she asked me about how interest rates work and about the stock market. Another way I had of learning when I was teaching Spanish to Gloria happened whenever she would tell me the Italian equivalent of a Spanish word or expression that she didn't know. So I do not have any recorded examples of this because I only recorded myself when I was the one who was being taught. But let me show you how I spontaneously tell Gloria some Spanish expressions I thought she probably wouldn't know.
L'ho visto mentre mi stavo truccando.
Ah, sai cosa è truccare in spagnolo? Trucar?
Un trucco è tipo un inganno, forse.
È tipo tweak, ma quando prendi una macchina, magari una moto, e
sì.
come dici, piece of cake, sarà una passeggiata. Ah, francomido.
Ah, ok. Balbettare.
Balbettare, sì, cosa è?
Tipo stutter.
Ah, balbettare, ok. Tartamudear.
Ah, sì, l'avevo sentito.
So those are the 3 things I've learned, and here are the 3 things I believe I could have done better. The most important mistake I've made was not doing complementary activities to strengthen my Italian. So speaking in your target language is certainly a great way of maintaining and improving your level, but it's also an incomplete way of going about it. It is strongly advisable to work on the other language learning domains, that is, you have to read and to listen to a lot of material in your target language. If I had done that, I would have learned some additional words that I would then have been able to use in the classroom, or vice versa, or the other way around. I would have been able to put in context again some of the words I had learned during my classrooms. But I did none of these because I was busy learning other languages, and because I had decided that I would just restrict the time that I would devote to Italian to the 1 hour of language exchange we would have on the weekends, plus a few minutes every now and then to review the vocabulary that I had learned. But a few months after starting this exchange, I realized that my level in Italian hadn't improved that much, that the improvement had only been marginal. By the end of the exchange, I was aware that I had learned a few words here and there, and that I felt more comfortable speaking in Italian, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that if I had done some complementary activities, say listen to a podcast a couple of times a week, for example, my improvement would have been way larger. By the way, sorry to interrupt, but could you just give me a like? It would help me promote this video. Thanks. The second mistake we made was not preparing the lessons in advance. At the beginning of the exchange, we would just talk about our daily lives and the other person would ask follow-up questions. But after a while, we sort of got tired of telling the other person what we had done during the week. Because by the end of the day, the anecdotes we would tell would be sort of similar week after week, which means that we were not getting out of our comfort zone when speaking the language, because we would resort to the structures and words that we already knew. So after realizing that, we started to organize ourselves a little bit, either by preparing some questions we would like to ask the other person, or by preparing a mini lecture of a topic chosen beforehand. This preparation would just take between 5 and 10 minutes, no more, but it would have a great impact on how much we would get out of the class. Because instead of starting the lessons with, hey, what's up, what have you been up to, we would go straight to a topic the other person was interested in, or we would ask the other person a question that was rather difficult to answer in the foreign language. And all of this made our language exchange more enriching and fun. The third thing I believe we could have done better is to let the other person prepare in advance. So something I noticed when reflecting upon this language exchange was that we probably should have shared the questions that we were gonna ask the other person before the class started. This way, the person that would have to answer the question would be able to look up the vocabulary related to that question beforehand and just recall it during our session. So let me get back to the example where Gloria asked me about the stock market, because while I was answering, we noticed that there were a few words about the topic I didn't really know in Italian.
Ciò che è più rentabile?
Hai detto rentabile, non so.
Il risico? No, è il...
Rischio.
Il rischio.
So as you can see, Gloria would tell me the missing word, I would use it on the spot, and then the class would continue. But that way, I'm less likely to remember that word in the long run. Whereas if I had known that word sort of before the class and had made the effort to recall it while I was making my explanation, then I'm more likely to retain it in the long run. So that was it for today. I hope you found this video informative and that it motivates you to start a language exchange. And if you're trying to learn Italian, I would encourage you to have a few sessions with Gloria. I'll leave a link to her ITALKI profile on the description below. Thanks and ci sentiamo!